dealing with WordPress security issues. So just by a show of hands, how many people have had their own personal sites hacked? All right. And how many people have de-hacked, unhacked, or dealt with a hacked site? So that's pretty much everybody here that's either had their site hacked or unhacked a site. I think it's still a misconception that WordPress is insecure because everyone here has had their site hacked. And I think there's a combination of, obviously, a lot of things that we as a community can continue to do, and WordPress developers can continue to do to keep making things secure. But pretty much, if you have anything on the web, at some point or sometime, someone's likely going to try to hack it or is going to be successful. You've had successful hacks at Bank of America, Sega, whatever. Like, there's been a ton of hacks. Groupon, Living Social, Twitter, and the list goes on. So WordPress is part of this ecosystem of the web, and so part of the way I think to approach WordPress security and security in general is to really try to detect, to have constant detection, and then be able to actually take action. So it's part of that. You know, you're never going to have 100% security at this point. So it's just a matter of trying to catch it. So that's a little bit. So a few points of entry, right, of like how can a WordPress site get hacked? Well, you have a few different things that WordPress is running on. So first you have your server, right, your hosting company. If you're running your own server, managing your own server, that's a point of entry that people can actually attack. So I don't know, you know, if people before the Pageleys and WP Engines and Zippy Kids came around, you know, you had DreamHost and Bluehost and a lot of these recommended hosts on WordPress.org were running a lot of these sites. So if you're running on a server with thousands of other sites and they can talk to each other, that's a security issue. So a lot of these Bluehost, DreamHosts companies have actually taken a look at that and have either solved those problems, and that's not an issue anymore, or they're working on it. So that's a point of entry on the hosting server side, right? There's also on the user side, right? So anybody who has an account that was set up, you know, a couple years ago, might have created a site with the username admin, right, that you log in. How many people still have a username named admin? Anybody? All right, so great. So this is going to be relevant for you guys. So the first thing to do after this talk, not during, it's okay, you guys are safe, is to go through and delete that user and reassign the posts to a new user and really create a really strong secure password. So there was a recent botnet attack. There were a bunch of attacks in April that were going through and trying to find WordPress sites that had the username admin, and we're trying to go through and just hash through thousands of passwords, right? What is it? What?
You're fine.
The laptop went down. All right. I'll keep going. So, so if you have a WordPress site with a username admin, get rid of it. And if you're not sure, you might have. Other point of entry for hackers is, you know, if you're sitting in an open Wi-Fi and someone can sniff out your usernames of your FTP, your database, or anything like that, that's a point of entry. So that's a thing to look at. And obviously, not keeping your WordPress site configured to the most up-to-date version, that's also a big point of entry. So if you go through, so who has not updated to 3.5.2 on their sites? Yeah. So So your site could potentially be vulnerable. Just keep it pointed this way so we don't see the hands, right? So one of the things to make sure you do is to keep your site updated. I dealt with a site a couple of months ago that was running like 2.6 well, I don't know. It's like years old, and they had issues installing a new plugin. They contacted me saying, we can't install this plugin, it's not working. Say, well, because you're running an old version of your WordPress site. Then I just knew there was malware on their server. I didn't even have to look at any of the files. They're running an old version. If you take anything before 3.5.2, which is the most recent version, and type in WordPress 3.5.1, security vulnerability or hack or anything like that, you're going to find a list of all the security vulnerabilities on the search engines, and they're all listed on WordPress.org as well. So you're going to find that. So it's important to keep your sites updated. Just the software itself, plugins, and themes. So in addition to WordPress itself being updated, if you're using a theme that's using a script called TimThumb, so who is using Woo themes? Nobody's using Woo themes? All right. Well, all right, there's a hand. So they had a big issue with their themes because they were using TimThumb. They went through, they took care of that immediately. They updated all their themes and had very detailed instructions on how to take care of that. So that's another point of thing to take a look at, is your plugins, your themes, the WordPress software, all these things to take a look at. And then on the other side of things, right, if the server is not configured properly, you're running an old version of WordPress, and you've also got an old version of PHP running, maybe you've got an old version of like MySQL running, anything like that, right? Old software sitting on your server can also be a vector of attack. So all these three areas, if your site gets hacked, yep. Did you say TimThumb? T-I-M.
Explain what that is and why that's...
Yeah, sure. Okay, so TimThumb, thank you. So TimThumb is a script that a lot of themes use. And what they use it for is to take any image that you're uploading to your WordPress site and resize it specifically like for the theme dynamically, right? Is that accurate? Yeah, all right. Yep.
It's also in a lot of plugins.
It is also in a lot of plugins. So if you're running a few plugins and a few themes, or you have even a theme that you may not be using and it has TimThumb on it, that's likely a way that your site could get attacked. So if
Explain the vulnerability.
what was the issue? So the question often is when I'm going through and taking care of a hacked site, it's like, well, why do they attack my site? I mean, I've only got like 20 people visiting my site a day. Why me? So like what was said earlier, is that this is not something that people are going out and saying, is this site running an old version of WordPress? Everything's automated for the most part. They're looking for old versions of TimThumb. They're looking for specific plugins. Hackers are going through and trying to automate as much as possible. So this is really not about finding, a site that's heavily trafficked. Often with these automated attacks, it's really just about getting access to a server. And they want that space so they can distribute malware, send spam, do any kind of malicious activity that they can do while they have access to your server. So oftentimes I'll get an email from someone saying, oh, well, this company is trying to use my server to access and host bank account records in Brazil or something, right? And I'm like, well, that's crazy. What's that about? Is that a question? Oh, okay. So it's really not about like getting access to your site. If you're running, if you don't have millions of hits on your site, it's really just about getting access to the server. A lot of times, that's one commonly understood motive of hackers. Hackers might have a ton of motives. So So one of the things that I want to go through and spend time on in terms of, why this happens, how this happens, is what we can do as a community and as individual site owners to take care of this. So one of the things is really just being aware whether you do have what users are on your account, on your site, who has access to your site. Sometimes sites get taken over or get hacked because unhappy employees go through and leave the company, and then they install weird stuff and lock people out. Sometimes that happens. And another thing is just staying current on what's happening in terms of WordPress security. And I have some resources for that towards the end of this presentation. So a few things to prevent this. One is to just go through and start a conversation with your host. If they have a phone number, give them a call, tell them that you attended this session and that you're concerned about security on your site. If you're not using a managed WordPress hosting company, it would be really good to go through and just submit a support ticket through that hosting company and ask them to do a security scan, ask them to look for any vulnerabilities. That's one place to start. Is to partner with your hosting company. The other part of things is to log into your site, go through and do a scan, look for any outdated plugins that need updating. Just make sure you're on the most recent version. 3.5.2 is the latest version that I know of as of today, and just make sure you're on that. You're on that. The other part of maintaining your site, obviously, is I'm a big advocate not only to take care of your site and manage it and keep it running ongoingly, but to have backups of your site. A lot of hosting companies, most hosting companies out there will keep their backups of your site on their servers or maybe off-site. I'm a big advocate of making sure that you have your own copy as well. You have access to it that's not only on that server or through your hosting company, but you can set up backups on Dropbox. You can download us manually, once a week, once a month. Just make sure you have, just like you have, I hope, people who keep tidy houses, right? You have a cleaning schedule, a maintenance schedule. When am I going to do the dishes? When am I going to do the laundry? When am I going to take care of these items? Put that in place for your WordPress site as well. And when am I going to go through and check that my backups are working, right? Maybe your downloads or your system is not in place. So just go through, run fire drills on your site, and take care of that. There's a few services that I wanted to mention as well. So I mentioned security.net. They are a really, really active and great partner for the WordPress community. And I wanted to make a plug for them because they've cleaned out and taken care of so many WordPress sites. They see the kind of security issues that I'm not sure even a lot of hosts have, because they're dealing with multiple hosts, multiple platforms, so they have a really, really wide view of what's happening in not only WordPress security, but web security in general, because they not only clean out WordPress sites, they also clean out Drupal sites and Joomla sites and all kinds of things. So they're a really good partner because they'll take care of, I've taken care of some sites in a matter of hours. They've gone through and cleaned up all the malware. There's a little bit of that's the automated side of things. That's software that's kind of running through your site, cleaning out, getting rid of malware, and taking care of that. But after they're done, it's up to you to go through and make sure that your WordPress sites are updated and changed, your FTP passwords are changed, your database passwords are changed, right? To take care of all that. And obviously this is kind of too much to go through and take care of, and you don't want to deal with security, you don't want to handle all that. Just go out and hire someone, find someone that's dealt with this kind of stuff. So here's a little bit about what to do when your site does get hacked, right? A little bit of plan of action. All right, my site got hacked. What do I do? So, place where I always start, even I'm managing a lot of sites. The first thing that I do, if I don't have the site hosted on my own, my own systems, my own server, if I'm not managing that client site, I go through and get in touch with the host immediately. That's the first place that I start. Just get that going, so they know about it. Right? The hosting company that's hosting your site doesn't want a hacked site on their servers. It's not good for them. In terms of what to do to keep your site secure. So they have a really nice visual version of a lot of these materials that I've actually covered. That WordPress.org link that I've got there, on that down there, it gives you a little bit of information about hardening WordPress. There's actually a really nice plugin, a free plugin that Security has. Or is that right? Security or Securi? Does anybody know? Security. All right. Scoury. So a lot of these things like hardening WordPress, they'll give you some of these tips. If you download that plugin that Security has on WordPress.org, they actually have a little checklist of some things that you can go through and take care of. So if your readme.html file is still on your server, the plugin, once it's installed, you go to that plugin's admin configurations page, you click a button saying delete readme HTML file, and that'll go through. As one of the things that I do actually, when I get a crisis email saying my WordPress site's been hacked, that's actually one of the things that I look at. If that file's still there, I'll know if they're running an old version of WordPress, and that's one of the things that I do even before I have access to the site. And then I also read this blog here, this Ars Technica site. So this author, Dan Gooden, writes a lot about security in general. So he's a really good source that I like to take a look at. So there's a little bit of that, and then let's see here. So before I wrap up, I did want to mention a little bit about why I'm personally invested in this and why I think it's so important, and my experience of dealing with this. So I started teaching a lot of WordPress classes, like getting started with WordPress, and I started doing this around 2006 and 2007. And I was working with a lot of artists, nonprofits, and organizations that are managing the sites themselves. And so about a year and a half ago now, I got hundreds of emails in the month of January and February from people that I had taught or worked with or had set up their site for free or whatever it was through classes saying, oh my gosh, my site's been hacked, what do I do? And it turned out that some of them had just not updated their WordPress sites for a while. Others were hosting on a host that they had been hacked, right? The hosting company was hacked. Other people had Tim Thumb issues. So it kind of happened all around the same time. And so I became really passionate about telling people to some of these very basic things that that you as site owners can do to take care of. But sometimes it's really just not enough, right? You can't really control necessarily what the hosting company does, but you can be very proactive in making sure that they're doing the right thing to protect your site and other people's sites that you're working with. So that said, if you're contacting your hosting company and your site's been hacked and they don't help you clean it up, chances are it's time to find a new hosting company. That's just the fact of it. After I dealt with all these, I mean, just imagine getting like 100, just even 50 emails saying my site's been hacked in like over the course of a couple of days, and you have a small company. It's not fun. Yeah.
Do you have any tips to prevent people from scraping or stealing your content, like your blog posts? I've had this issue where I put up really good blog posts and other people just steal the entire post and repost it on their WordPress site. Or tips to prevent data miners taking your content. I consider that a security issue. Do you have a comment on that?
I think one of the things that I've personally dealt with that I could speak to a little bit about that is I've worked with some architecture firms that they were concerned about their images getting stolen. Obviously, I mean, if your stuff is on the web, chances are it's good, it's going to get reposted. I mean, I just kind of accept that as a fact. There are some things I think that as a site owner you could do is maybe look for certain IP addresses that are constantly coming to your site and block those. Sometimes there are ways to detect malicious IP addresses, and partnering with your hosting company, I think, is one way to deal with that. But I haven't dealt with personally with people like stealing and ripping off your content in an automated way. I have dealt with like video production movie companies where people, like, it's really popular, people want to watch it, and they're posting their videos on YouTube. And sometimes it's just a process of going through and like notifying like a copyright violation and just being aware of that. The other thing that Of done, like for that architect client, was just go through and do, like I just had them set up Google alerts for some of the keywords that they were doing. It's a marketing thing, but it's also copyright protection. So there is a plugin that I used for them that it makes it impossible to go through and do a copy and paste of the content and the images. Like, you can't drag the images down from the browser to your desktop. So that's one thing that they specifically asked for. I think if you're blogging and you want people to share your content, that's kind of cannibalizes that aspect. So that's all I got to say on that. Yeah.
A developer once commented that simple scripts isn't secure to use for installing WordPress. Do you have any concern?
I think that, so the question was simple scripts. So some hosting companies I know use simple scripts to make the installation of WordPress on your server, on your hosting company and your server, easier. And the question was whether that's an issue. I'm gonna go out on a ledge here and say if there's a company using simple scripts, I would hope that they're monitoring that software for security. If I'm trusting a company that to host with, I know that that Bluehost uses simple scripts. If I'm going to trust my site with Bluehost, then I would trust them. I would extend that trust to the third-party services that they use. So if there's a concern about simple scripts, that concern would extend to Bluehost as well. I think Bluehost has been around a long time. I think they're a good WordPress hosting partner. They definitely do a pretty good job in monitoring this stuff. But that is a security issue, right? If simple scripts does get hacked, chances are they can hack into Bluehost and they can hack into your WordPress site. So that's also something to look out for. Yeah.
Just a quick note about Bluehost and shared hosting companies with there's a they logically separate the databases between WordPress sites. So that's a complicated way of saying that you don't have fixes between like your backyards of like your site and somebody else's site. So if somebody gets hacked on their side on a shared host, yeah, more than you think, and you may not even realize it's happened. You could be following all the right security protocol, keeping your site up to date, have a strong password and stuff, and then you may not notice your site gets hacked, or your site may get hacked and you fix it, and then it gets hacked again and you fix it. You don't realize what's going on.
Question?
The problem we've encountered with She has a few sites. She's had a ton of hacking attacks to the point where the host took her sites down.
Really good stump the presenter kind of question. So you asked, and what's your name?
Massimo.
Massimo. So Massimo asked about what happens. How do you prevent someone from basically slamming your site with traffic? Right. Is that basically what's happening, or that's something else that's happening?
It's not a denial of service. It is people trying to their brute force attacks. Because of the volume of those brute force attacks, it puts a huge load on the server.
Right.
And basically it creates a DLL.
So if your host is shutting you down for that, I mean, if the host is shutting you down for that, and the host doesn't have enough stuff in place, you're gonna have to you're gonna either have to put some stuff manually in place to block those IP addresses, or find a new host.
Yeah.
The second solution is what blocking IP addresses becomes very
Yeah, I think it's a partnership for something like that. That's a combination between. I think that's a little bit higher up than like your personal site, right? There is some stuff that you could do to put into place for that, right? To basically block all these. All this traffic coming in, which essentially is it, right? So if your site's getting shut down because you're getting slammed with all these attacks, right? And your host is shutting you down, then like what Austin said, if you're using Cloudflare or you're using
Cloudflare security, that problem doesn't happen.
Well, it might or might not happen, right? So Cloudflare, security, all these proxies that kind of can filter out some of these bad IPs, it's actually still possible. There was an article that guy in Ars Technica wrote that even with Cloudflare in place, there were some security issues. So if your site's getting shut down, chances are you should have a serious conversation with your service provider, saying like, I'm doing all these things, I'm taking these precautions, what can you do to help? And if they can't really do anything to help, you should look for a hosting company that can help. But I think those are good precautions. I didn't mention actually was Cloudflare and the other service by security.
Do you mind if I add something else to that?
Sure.
There's an economics issue with it. It's that on a shared hosting account, like $5 to $10 or whatever, there's only so much that they can do and still have to make you a profitable customer at that point. And that's just running a business. So if they're shutting you down, they're basically saying you're becoming an unprofitable customer at this point, and that's sort of like breaking up with you without actually breaking up with you. And that's really how you should think about it. Is you're like, oh, okay, so we have something going on here that our host cannot economically provide for us, which means you may have to spend more money on your hosting.
It's obviously not a good hosting company.
Yep, back there.
So, one is the websites, they're all WordPress now, and until 2 years ago, we didn't really care about security. Like, who would want to attack our sites? But 2 years ago, we discussed our intent. And a lot of sites in Los Angeles, that was the same, they had content that they did not want anyone else to take without paying for it. So we did start putting in CDNs, found certain things that you just can't right-click to copy. Anyone who wants to take your image, of course, there's ways to snip it and take it out. That would be a high-res quality image. There are ways to find specific things that don't allow you to right-click. Work with a CDN that prevents,
Hot linking, right?
hacking, this prevents spam. It's a combination of file permission with Airbnb. Many times, a lot of people will just manually update WordPress. And you must always check the file permission with Airbnb. Because that's one source where just kind of not really sure about how to add plugins, because plugins are just not created equal. There's some really good plugins about WordPress and some really, buy this now for $2 plugins. And that can really take the site down. So I think combination of show you settings if you're using the CDN, file permissions, just be cognizant of which plugins you're adding, and just kind of taking overall responsibility. Overall, it's your site.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, if there were any takeaways from this, just as a site owner, just in terms of very basic things that you can do, I listed them out. A few things that I didn't list out specifically is just to go through if you have any unused themes or plugins, go through and just get rid of them. Just you don't need them on your site. They could be a security vulnerability. Just get rid of them.
Isn't one of the big things, I finally this morning was looking to buy certificates. I had like 5 or more WordPress sites, and I finally was like, hey, how do I secure the admin area? Like it's kind of a process if you're not a developer. I mean, I'm going to do it, but how do you, I'm curious how you go about your strategy.
Actually, there was a pretty good post also on the WP Engine blog by Tony Perez. So Tony wrote in terms of like how he deals with security. Securing the admin area is actually a pretty good idea. There are ways to go through and basically put a password on that security area. So in order to even to access that WP admin or the login PHP, to actually put a password on that page to go through and do that. I think getting an SSL seal and making like HTTPS for your admin area and your admin screen is actually a pretty decent idea. But I think I don't know, personally, I think if you're having to worry about that, I think you're in a good spot, because it probably means, I'm hoping, that you've already taken care of some of these basics, right? So I think there's a few things that you can do there. I haven't used any specific plugins to help do that. I don't know if anybody else here has in terms of securing the WP admin area. Has anybody done that? What's that?
You don't need a plugin. You just set it in your WP config.
Yep, you can do that, exactly.
There's a defined line you can add your WP config. Your WP config file. Your main WordPress config file. There's like one line, and I'm sure it's on the WordPress codex, but there's one line that you can add in there. It's called like SSL, use SSL admin or something to that effect. That will do exactly what you're talking about. That if you have SSL enabled for your web host, then when you go to your admin portion of your install, it'll force it to be SSL. There you go. That's it.
All right, crowdsourcing solutions. Thank you. Sweet. So the what he said was in the WP config file, what you can do is to add some code there to force SSL. And the gentleman back there with a nice beret said that that line was force SSL. Is that correct? Yeah. So if you search for WP config force SSL, I'm hoping that it will just come up. Yeah. If you have it. So there was a question over here from a gentleman, and then Austin, I'm out of time?
Fine. Let me just check in real quick. So it's right after 7:30. Why don't we take another 10 or 15 minutes of questions? But in the meantime, go back, get more pizza, finish the beer off, etc. while we're answering questions, because Jaki can probably go all night. We're all, but yeah.
So there was a question over here. Sir, did you still have a question? Yeah?
So I run a multi-author site, and my concern is that I have all these people who are just contributor access, but other than encouraging them to get like a stronger password, what was my site on work?
Yes. That is a great question. So I will repeat the question. The question was, so you have a site that has many authors, and they're all contributing to his site, and he's concerned that their passwords are not strong enough, right? So how do you go through and take care of that? So I am certain that there's a plugin for that you can essentially force strong passwords. If you're really vigilant about this and you're just like, all right, I'm just gonna make sure they're all strong passwords, I would go ahead and install that plugin. I can't remember the name of the plugin, it's not coming to me, but you can find that plugin to force strong passwords for your WordPress users. And then if you're really vigilante about it, you can just go and reset everyone's passwords. I probably wouldn't recommend that because people are gonna be like, what are you doing? Like, you just reset my passwords, what is your problem? So, think through the process. Maybe you want to go through, send all your users an email saying, I attended this WordPress security talk. I think it's really important for everyone to have secure passwords. Please make sure to update your passwords, and in X amount of time, your passwords will be reset for you. So if you're dealing with legacy insecure passwords, that would be a great thing to do. That's a great, great question. Yeah. So there was a question here from this gentleman. Yes?
Days ago on a website called Network World, they had an article that said that 70% of the leading WordPress plugins are vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm wondering is, like, so we have all this stuff.
We're installing software that someone else wrote, right? So I'm not sure what the article said in terms of what the security issue is. In terms of, he said 70% of WordPress plugins are supposedly insecure. So I'm not, I don't want to quote that as fact. I'm not sure what they were saying. So it could be I don't know what the security vulnerability, but if you're using a plugin and you're getting it from WordPress.org, there was actually an issue with this also in April where someone had, it was a very, very popular plugin. There's, I think, close to 1 million people using this plugin. Someone had gotten access to the source to be able to contribute to WordPress.org, put malware on there, and then everyone who was using that plugin had their site vulnerable. So if that's the case, delete the plugin. If your site's getting hacked with that plugin, that's what happened to a lot of sites. The people that were using that plugin just got rid of that plugin. I would hope that if a plugin is getting contributed to WordPress.org, that the initial time is being committed, it would be secure. But that's a really good question in terms of how to look out for that. There are some plugins that are listed also on the WP Engine site of disallowed plugins, and it could be for varied reasons. It could be that it's either insecure, it creates a lot of load on the database or on your site. So that's, I think, one resource that I look to in terms of plugins that are either compromised or not allowed. So I would look to that resource as a potential place to go. Does that answer that question? Yeah.
Do you have a top 3 or 5 favorite plugins, security plugins?
So that's a good question. So there's one plugin that I really like, which limits the login attempts to your WP admin. And that plugin is limit login attempts. I think that's exactly what it's called. Is that right? Yeah. So that's one that's really nice. And some of those, say that again? Is it? So it limit login attempts. So that will give you the amount of the configuration that you can actually go through and limit how many times you put in a fake password or wrong password. So if you want people to not guess your passwords more than 3 times, it'll lock you out of the site after 3 login attempts. You can also change the duration. So if you want to have 20 minutes between login attempts, you can change that as well. I think the plugins that Security has are pretty good. They have one that is a free version on WordPress.org, and they have another version that you get if you pay for their subscription service. That plugin is really nice because what it allows you to do is you get a log of all the activity on your site. Who's visited, what IP addresses are coming through, what author logged in, when did they log in, right? You have a large log of all the activity on your site. It's really nice. So that's a nice. And that's part of their paid system. Another plugin that that I really like. It's not necessarily a plugin, but I really like using Cloudflare as a service because it helps block a lot of malicious IPs and handles a lot of that security. So I would say those are my nice security plugins that I would say. Yep.
Are you familiar with VPS Security?
Am I familiar with VPS Security? I'm not familiar with a plugin.
Yeah, it's a plugin, a WordPress plugin, and what I understand that it does is takes your WordPress config file and actually takes it out of where it's normally supposed to be.
Oh, okay.
Right out of the entire folder system, which helps to create more security as well.
All right.
So far, I've liked it.
Okay. I have not worked with it, but VPS. You said it's B like boy. Okay, BPS. Okay. That's a good resource. I'll take a look at it. Yes. Oh, WordFriends, yes. So yes, WordFriends is also popular. I haven't used it. I'm not familiar with it personally, but it is also a really good resource. Is anybody using WordFriends? Yeah. Say that again. Better WP Security. Okay. Great. Yeah, these are great resources. Yep. Author slug plugins?
Yes, because what happens is that if you notice the author archives in WordPress, it gives away the username.
The username, right.
You know, and which, in my opinion, is a design flaw.
Right.
So unless you want to tell the whole world what your actual username is, you have to use an author slug plugin.
Yeah.
So as to replace that, or you just don't use the author.
To use author, right, right. Yeah, that's actually something that I didn't mention. That's actually a really, really good point. So, what's your name? Jason. So Jason was saying author slug plugins. So if you have, like this gentleman over here, you have a lot of authors on your site, or even just one, and there's a link to all posts by this author, it's going to have the username right in the URL. So what do you do about that? Again, I would say if you've taken care of a lot of these issues, that's another area to take a look at in terms of changing the URL of the author. I actually think that's a pretty good tip to take a look at. I think it's something that I haven't seen or I haven't heard of so much, but people are finding new hacks every day. So that's another potential vector. I don't think it's going to be as popular to go through and take care of like outdated sites, but it's a path of trying to hack in and trying to guess passwords. I think if you're using strong passwords, if you're using the limit login attempts, if you're taking care of a lot of these other precautions, I'm hoping that guessing the username of your site might not be so much of an issue. But yeah, it's definitely an issue. It's definitely an issue. Yeah. So yes.
It's recommended that I use CAPTCHA.
CAPTCHA.
What do you think about that? I think if people go to your website and see that, they go, oh, screw it, I'm
So is this for your login page, or like for comments and such? Yeah, so I think you're asking about using CAPTCHA. I think CAPTCHA itself definitely goes through and if you're putting it on your login page or putting something like that, another security precaution, I think obviously the more you have in place to block people from logging in and getting access to your site, the more secure site's going to be. I think at a certain point it becomes like almost unusable, right? If you have a password to access the login page, to access that, but you're putting all these fences, you won't even be able to get in. So I think there's definitely, in terms of approach of how to tackle this, there's some common sense and some best practices. I think after a certain point it becomes like, well, this is just, you can spend all day dealing with this and putting up all these restrictions. It becomes impractical at a certain point. That's kind of maybe a larger approach. I don't know if it answers your question, but yeah. So, all right. Well, I'll be around. It sounds like people are grabbing food here. I'll dismiss everyone, but I'm really happy and passionate to talk about this. I think the thing that it's so important for me to make sure people know about this is because I don't want anybody to have to deal with a hacked site. So if there's anything that I've said that helps in preventing that, then I hope it's been useful. So take this away. I'll make sure this is publicly available for everyone, and keep your site secure.